Hello and welcome. I sometimes get calls from people that tell me, my seat springs are shot, or I'm sitting so low in my recliner I can feel the seat frame. This is a common problem with upholstered furniture as it ages, not just recliners. So today I'm going to show you how to determine what to repair if you find yourself sitting too low in your recliner. But before we troubleshoot the problem with your seat, let's take a look at how many recliner seats are constructed. Here are the basic parts that support your weight in the chair. We start with the seat frame with attached seat springs and the seat cushion core. Now, there may be other miscellaneous parts. You may have a deck panel over top of your springs, or you may have a layer of Dacron on top of your seat cushion core. But these other parts do not play a major role when it comes to supporting your weight in the chair, so we don't need to concern ourselves with them in this video. So our two major components are the seat cushion foam and the seat springs. So are your springs shot? Well, let's take a look. The first thing you want to do is roll your chair over so you can see the springs from underneath. Look for any springs that are hanging down that have come loose or are broken. Now, if there are no springs sticking down or poking through a dust cover if you have one, your springs are probably fine. Do seat springs lose their firmness over time? No, not significantly. In fact, there's only one way that I've seen that seat springs can be weakened. If you have small children or even teenagers that are standing up in your furniture and using it as a trampoline, they can actually exert enough force to physically stretch your spring. And you can check that. Just look closely at these little loops and the distances between them. They are identical on all the springs from the factory. So if you see some areas that are wider than others, yes, your springs have been stretched. But for most people, I'm hoping this is not a concern. So if the springs look in place like this, they're fine. Though it's always smart to check your springs, in the end, the seat foam is going to be your primary source of support in your seat. Over time, the foam will break in and eventually break down. Before we talk about replacing your foam, however, there's one more thing to look for when you're inspecting those springs from underneath. Look for damage on the underside of your seat cushion on either side of the seat frame, where the cushion makes contact when you sit in the seat. You may find a cut that you can stick your fingers into, or even your hand. These cuts are actually quite common. I see them all the time, but I'm mentioning them here because they can and do affect how much seat support you have. So if you're interested in trying to avoid these cuts, let me describe the three main causes I've found for them and how you might be able to avoid them. Number one is the seat plopper or seat dropper. That person that doesn't sit down normally in a chair, but they just drop down into the seat. Well, that force from them dropping down drives the underside of the cushion hard into these rails. Another is, some people like to sit next to one arm frame, so they shift their weight over to one edge of the seat, which puts more pressure on the foam there and drives it into the seat frame. And finally, if you're just a larger person, if you're just heavier, that's going to be more force that drives the seat cushion down onto the edge of the rail and can cut it as well. So when the foam cuts go through one or both sides, you'll definitely notice that you're sitting lower in the chair, even if you have a relatively new seat cushion. So your seat foam will break in and eventually break down. And when it does break down, it'll take one of two different forms. The seat foam may compress and become smaller. It actually won't be as tall as it was originally. And when that happens, the seat cover on top may become loose. And the shape of your seat, you may see irregular shapes or dips. So that's the first way. The second way is the seat might look perfectly normal, but when you sit in it, it is so soft that you sink way down. If you don't mind sitting lower in your chair and you're not uncomfortable, you don't have to do anything. I've had customers bring chairs into my shop that are 20 or 30 years old, and they have very little of the original seat foam left. but it's not causing them any problem, and so they live with it. However, if you are uncomfortable and you're having trouble getting out of your chair because it sits so low, yeah, you'll need to replace your seat cushion. Okay, here's some replacement foam options to consider. If you can, get your replacement seat foam from the manufacturer who made your chair. Okay? If you can do that, then the part's going to be cut to the right size and shape and ready to install. However, if you're not happy with how long that foam lasted in your original chair, you might not want to order from the manufacturer. Let me give you an example. Let's say your chair is only 2 years old and you need to replace the seat foam. If you order through your manufacturer, chances are you're going to get a very similar product that's going to last approximately the same amount of time. Now, you can check and find out if a higher density option is available. If so, it should last a bit longer than the original seat foam. But if a higher density option is not available, be forewarned that your replacement seat cushion core is not likely to last any longer than the original did. Another option is to have an experienced upholsterer install your seat foam. The experienced upholsterer will have the most knowledge concerning different density options and which of those densities are more likely to meet your needs. Another option, if you're going to install the foam yourself and you don't want to use the manufacturer part, is to go through an online foam supplier or upholstery supplier. Upholstery suppliers will usually stock fabrics and foams. So those are your three options for getting the foam: the manufacturer, an upholstering shop, or an online foam supplier. If you do have a problem with your seat springs, be sure to see my video, How to Install Recliner Seat Springs, and there's also information on those parts if you need them as well. Hopefully in the future, I'll do a video on installing seat foam in a recliner so that you can see that repair in more detail. Well, that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.